Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of Talk Life with Teg. I am the Eagle Girl and we have a special guest with us today. So please can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hello everyone, my name is Marvin Eckhart and it's a pleasure to be here. I hope that we all learn a thing or two from what we have to say this day.
Okay, thank you very much, Marvin, for joining us today. And today we'll be talking about sexual and reproductive health and rights. And just like Marvin said, I hope we'll learn some very important details about this today. So first of all, what exactly, when we talk about sexual and reproductive health, what exactly are we talking about?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. When we talk about sexual and reproductive health, we are basically referring to the general physical, mental, and social well-being of the reproductive system of an individual. And when we say someone has good sexual and reproductive health, we are trying to say that the person has a satisfying sex life, a safe sex life, the capacity to reproduce, and the freedom to decide when he or she wants to reproduce, and if, when, or how often they want to reproduce. So that's basically about sexual and reproductive health.
Oh, okay. You mentioned a safe health life. You mentioned capacity to reproduce and the freedom to choose when and how much. Yeah. Okay. But sexual health and reproductive health, they're not exactly the same. I don't think they're exactly the same, are they?
There's a slight difference between sexual health and reproductive health. For sexual health, it's more of related to the sexuality of an individual, and it has to do with the absence of diseases, dysfunctions, infirmities. It also involves a positive kind of approach and a respectful approach to people's sexuality and sexual relationships. It has to do with the ability and possibility of people having pleasurable and safe sexual experiences that are free from violence, free from coercion, and discrimination. But then reproductive health is more generally linked with the matters of the reproductive system and its functions and processes. So that's where we have to do with the reproduction, the capacity to reproduce, the freedom to reproduce if people decide to reproduce, and how often they reproduce. So that's basically.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Oh, this topic, is not something that is being discussed very often. But if we're talking about it, it means it's something that is important to be talked about. So can you maybe shed some light on why you think this is an important topic to be discussed among people today?
Of course, the topic is really important, especially amongst young people who are probably and most likely sexually active. So young people need to know about their reproductive organs, their sexual life, their sexual health, and their rights as well. Because whether they are sexually active or not, the knowledge they have will help them to make informed decisions regarding their own choices and their own sexual rights. So it's for information to aid decision making and to also help people live healthier lives. Ignorance is no defense anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned the rights, like it's important to know your rights when we're talking about sexual health or your reproductive health. So in what areas or in what aspects could we say that these rights come to play? Like for a young person who is sexually active, we're talking about your sexual and reproductive health rights. Like in what aspects do you think these rights should come in place?
Okay, yeah. Basically, before we talking about how the sexual and reproductive rights should come in place, we have to understand what they really are.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about sexual and reproductive rights, we are involving the rights to equality and non-discrimination of sexes.
Mm-hmm.
We are also referring to the right to be free from being treated inhumanly or punished. We are talking about the right to privacy of the highest standards of health available for both sexes. We're talking about the right to marry and to find a family or enter into marriage with free and full consent of the intending spouses, and also a right to equality in case of the dissolution of marriage. We are also involving the right to decide the number and spacing of one's children. We are involving the right to information as well as education as regards sex. And we are also considering the freedom of opinion and expression as regards sex. And most importantly, there's also the right to effective remedy if any of these sexual or reproductive rights are violated. So sexual and reproductive rights and an understanding of these rights would help us even as we act and make decisions in the society or amongst ourselves when dealing with other people.
Okay. So when do we think these rights would come in play as a young adult, as a human being?
Okay, thank you. The sexual and reproductive rights, like I said earlier, are things that everybody needs to know, both the young, the old. In fact, by reason of being an individual, you have to know about your sexual and reproductive rights, and they should be taught. Parents should teach their children. Children should be taught in schools. Everyone should know, because it will help us because we know ourselves. We know our sexes. We've come to acceptance of who we are and who other people are, and those differences that exist. So we don't have to force ourselves on others. And I mean, it would give better results.
Yeah, that's actually very insightful. I mean, when we know ourselves, it's like you said, it will help for better coexistence. I mean, you know who you are, you know what your rights are, you know that the only person you have rights over their sexuality, over their body is yourself and not any other person. So we'll better coexist with each other, like you've already said. But then
that's true.
Yeah, maintaining one's sexual and reproductive health. I mean, I feel like there are things that we need to know. There are things that has to be made available or something that we should be able to do or know or have around to be able to actually maintain our sexual health or our reproductive health. So what do you think is needed for this to actually be achievable?
Okay, the most important thing we need to enable the implementation of these rights and understanding of these rights is education. The fact is, people need to know their sexual and reproductive rights. Body coming to have unconsented sexual activity with someone, probably just walk up to grab someone, or probably harass someone, or probably do a thing or two to someone without understanding that this person has these rights over their bodies. So education goes a really long way to letting people know that these rights exist. This is who you are as an individual. This is where your limits are. The fact is that you can actually get punished if you go against these rights and you violate someone else's rights. Another thing is also the health aspect of it. So people are educated about how to take care of their bodies. For instance, we're talking about reproductive health. You know that at this age, this is how you should be clean, maintain this proper hygiene, go for regular checkups to ensure that you're not living with infections and all of that, so that it doesn't affect you probably when you want to have sex or probably have children. It also goes there to ensure that people have safe sex. You when we talk about safe sex, we're not talking just about the prevention of pregnancy. We are also talking about the prevention of sexually transmitted diseases and every other thing. So there is the educational aspect, there is the health aspect, and there's the social aspect too, where everybody should be involved. The social aspect involves everybody. So the message is being preached in schools, is being propagated by the government, by the media, where everybody has an understanding of their sexual and reproductive health rights. As such, they would live in line with the rights based on their understanding. So yeah, I think those are the major areas that would help to enforce this right and get more people aware that this right exists.
Exactly. And I like what you said about everybody being involved. You know, in our community, in this part of the world, it's almost a taboo to talk about things like this. Like, children grow up without knowing anything about their sexuality. They know nothing about their rights. Some even know nothing about proper hygiene, how to take care of themselves and protect their reproductive system from infections and all. So it's what you said about everybody being involved is very important. Parents teaching their children, it being taught in school and taught accurately and appropriately too. You know, sometimes you hear different things and none of them is actually hitting the nail on the head. Everybody is just trying to beat around the bush, and I don't know, maybe feeling like if they don't know they are safe or something. But like you said, ignorance doesn't, it's not a defense in any way. It actually opens us up to more danger when we don't know than when we actually don't know.
Yeah, you're right.
So
you're right.
We need to be educated about these things and pay attention to our health. I mean, it's about sexual and reproductive health and then the rights as well. So what you've said is actually, it's very, very, how would I put it? Very, very apt for everybody getting involved. Then there's, access, like you mentioned, education, like access to accurate information and, from, like I've said, from school being taught accurately and right, even in our homes, the parents being able to open up to their children. If you don't teach your children at home, they're going to learn it outside and they'll probably learn the wrong information. Yeah, you get what I'm trying to say, right?
That's so correct. I mean, if parents could be more open to teach their children from birth, the first lesson every parent needs to teach their child is consent, and that's the fact that the only person's body you have a right to is yours. Once someone understands consent, it's very easy for the person to understand every other thing. And then the parents too need to learn to teach their children the right names of these organs, the right information. Let's not say because these children are small, we are not going to teach them. There's a way to teach education to really small children in their own understanding. Teach them their body parts, call those parts by their names, the penis, the vagina, let them know. Exactly. Not a situation where you're probably calling it rod, or you're probably giving it a pet name, and you're probably your fish or your meats, and so many meats flying around, and these children
get confused.
Learn the wrong
exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. So the right information at the right time is really, really key.
Yeah. And also talking about the rights, there are different issues that come up when we talk about sexuality and reproduction, issues of sexual violence, sexually transmitted diseases, unwanted pregnancy and unsafe abortions, things like that. So when you're talking to somebody about their sexual rights or their sexual and reproductive rights, and in this, when we're talking about things like sexual violence and unwanted pregnancy and unsafe abortion, like, what advice could you give in situations like this? What could the person do maybe to prevent this, or if it has happened, what is the safe step to take?
Thank you very much for that question. In my little experience and the right way it's supposed to be, these rights have links with what you've just said: trauma, sexually transmitted infections, and spread of HIV, unwanted pregnancies, unsafe abortion. So everything was that what doing, they have a right to do it. It's way easier. So someone knows that they have a right to have protected sex. They are supposed to actually be given to help them protect themselves. They have a right to get access to contraceptives. They have a right to get access to family planning methods. They have a right to decide when they want to have sex, how they want to have sex, with whom they want to have sex, where they want to have sex, and make other decisions as regards their sexual and reproductive health. It will help them make better decisions. The problem is most people don't even know this right. So somebody just comes up with an unwanted pregnancy because he or she didn't even know that it is when you sleep with someone that you get pregnant, and probably you could even have it through other means, or somebody does not understand their rights and then they are coerced or forced into sex. They are probably raped, probably sexually harassed, and then they now have unwanted pregnancies, and then you probably try to tell them no, they don't have to have abortions and all of that, or you're teaching them these things the wrong way. So I feel when people are properly taught their sexual and reproductive health rights, they would be better informed and they would make decisions to make better decisions. I always advise prevention over. I would always advise prevention. So if you know that this decision you're about to take is going to affect you negatively, why are you really taking it? If you know that there is a way to if you know that there's a way to avoid this, why don't you have safe sex instead of wasting so much money and time and energy in treating sexually transmitted diseases? Why not have safe sex instead of having an unplanned pregnancy and as such wanting an abortion? Why not have the number of children you can take care of instead of having children and beginning to blame the society for your inability to train them? Why not wait until you are financially, mentally, physically, and emotionally ready to take care of these children before having them? When people get to understand, when people get to understand these things, it will help them make better informed decisions. So it's still the same thing. People suffer a lot of trauma from experiences. You're having children you can't cater for, probably sleeping with someone you really don't want to sleep with. You have an infection that probably ruins you and you don't even know how to manage it properly. You don't want to get medical help. You're taking wrong decisions, and wrong decisions are leading to worse experiences. If people could get to understand the truth and know that these rights belong to us and we have access to health, access to information, access to services, then a lot of mistakes people are making, they won't make them.
These are actually,
that's just it.
These are very, very important points that people need to know, honestly. And I mean, if we're talking about rights, we also have rights to get to this information. They are out there. There are different people are releasing the right kind of information on social media, on the internet. We have to seek these things out. We have to take time to know what we need to know and learn what we need to learn before we make decisions. I mean, you can't just go on having sex with somebody just because the person is coercing you to, or just because of one thing you heard or the other, without having the right kind of information. Because I mean, it doesn't just end in sex. There are so many other things that will come after it. If it's not unplanned pregnancy, it's sexually transmitted disease, it's a relationship that you're not even emotionally or mentally equipped to handle. So we really need to get informed. Then the school, the government, everybody needs to get involved in making sure that people are armed with the right kind of information. We have access to sexual and reproductive health care. We have access to the information we need. And we have the autonomy when we're making decisions in these kind of things. Like you mentioned, we have rights to privacy, right to be free from sexual violence, right to be free from any form of discrimination when it has to do with sex, right to determine the number of children you want to have and the spacing and all those things. So it's really important that we get to know these things and actually apply them. And when you find yourself in a situation where maybe you're confused, you don't know what to do, then seek advice from the right source. Go to a medical practitioner if you need advice on sexual and reproductive health. Talk to somebody. And one more point that I really want to make, and I feel is very important, is the issue of people being, will I say, timid, or I don't know, maybe timid is not the word. When you're being victimized from a sexual violence issue and then not being able to speak up or report, it's another right that we should know that we have. I mean, isn't it, that you have the right to actually speak up when you're being sexually violated?
The truth is, and share their stories. Most people do not like to talk about their experiences, especially when it comes to sexual violence, domestic violence, and gender-based violence. But the fact remains that if people could be up is part of their sexual and reproductive health rights, it will go a long way to. I'll be advising everybody that has a story to share. Please come up open and share your story. If you get to have any funny experience, get to report immediately. It's when you speak up that you could get justice. It's when you speak up that you can heal. And it's also when you speak awareness for people that do not know the dangers of these things, as well as other victims, to find healing and know that they are not alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Marvelyn. This session has been very informative and very insightful. So I hope that we've all learned from today. I will know that it's very important to pay attention to our sexual and reproductive health and the rights as well. Know your rights and know that your neighbor also has rights, and don't violate those rights. So thank you again, Marvelyn. We've come to the end of this episode and also to the end of this season in Talk Life with TEG. So we'll have very many things planned for the next season before we get into that. Well, thank you again very much. Thank you again. I think this is a wrap. All right. Bye.